Speak to Adam Hadley, who's Executive Director of Tech Against Terrorism, a UN-founded group combating terror and disinformation online. Good afternoon to you, Adam.
Good afternoon. Thanks for having me on the show.
You're very welcome. So we know that part of the issue, not the whole issue, but part of the issue is misinformation that started about the crime, which we can't really talk about because someone's been charged now. That contributed, it spread, the rumours spread, false rumours spread, it contributed to violence. Now what we're seeing is lots of social media and online accounts telling people to assemble here, there, to take back control, to take back the country, etc., and to indulge and take part in protests this weekend. Can anything stop that?
So at Tech Against Terrorism, we focus on analysing the terrorist use of the internet, which is pretty high bar, pretty high threshold. So by that, we mean focusing on the use of the internet by Al-Qaeda, by IS and so on. But we also look at how the extreme far right use messaging apps and other social media platforms. What we found immediately before the initial protest was deliberate, coordinated effort to encourage people to congregate. And I think it's really important to make a distinction between misinformation and disinformation. The difference being that at any one point, there might be many things that are kind of the mistakes are made. Maybe there are, assumptions being made in the news. That happens. And unfortunately, sometimes that can become viral. But what we're talking about here is quite different. This is deliberate attempts by individuals or organizations unknown to plant ideas, knowing full well that they are wrong, and then trying to kind of whip up a frenzy about them. And the way that we've seen various social media platforms being used in advance of what happened in the recent protests was posters being shared, bot networks being activated, things being shared in a fairly strange way. And actually, some of the initial posters were shared on TikTok accounts that previously hadn't shared anything at all. They just seemed to appear out of nowhere and within hours get hundreds of thousands of views. It's very strange. The problem is this is pretty hard to analyze because it takes a significant amount of open source intelligence capability and expertise to understand where this activity has come from. But I would say we should probably make a distinction here between mis and disinformation because this was initially deliberate. What is happening now is a different story. And unfortunately, we're seeing more posters being shared, more protests being organized. And that's a different matter now, because the problem we find, of course, is as soon as this starts, it's very difficult to stop.
The other side of this, of course, is that this is a difficult thing to control, but a lot of it is, unless it's on WhatsApp, which is private, if it's on social media accounts, it's there to be seen and to be monitored and assessed and acted upon.
Yeah, and also the cross-platform nature of this makes it pretty difficult for analysts to understand or platforms to respond to. So the Prime Minister yesterday announced the establishment of a new unit to look at this type of political violence. That's a really great idea. But in our view, the challenge actually is about coordinating a rapid and credible response. Disinformation can spread within minutes. So what that means is we've got to respond in a coordinated fashion very quickly. We've also got to create an environment, a political environment, in which, as you say, politicians try and calm the situation down. And, again, as the Prime Minister said yesterday, this isn't about performative politics. This is about trying to calm the situation down, trying to ensure that community cohesion is stabilized and secured. And as Neil just said, this whole conversation has been hijacked by the extreme far right. We should be talking about how to support the victims of the attack and how to ensure that vulnerable communities are being protected. That should be the conversation, not how fringe politicians and fringe elements of the extreme far right in this country are trying to drive grievance in our society.